single dad takes job as a cleaner, never thought his millionaire CEO would fall for him first. Under the hum of fluorescent lights, the office floor was silent, except for the low, distant drone of a cleaning cart and the faint ticking of a wall clock. It was well past midnight, but Rachel hadn't left. Again. Her desk was a sea of documents, her computer still glowing with unread emails and pending contracts. She stood, stretching her back, then walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window of the 25th floor. Outside, the city pulsed quietly, streetlights blinking, traffic slowing to a whisper. But something caught her eye. Just outside on the terrace platform that jutted along the edge of the building, a figure stood alarmingly close to the railing. Her heart jumped. She rushed to the emergency exit that led to the outer maintenance ledge and flung it open. The night air was cold and sharp. "What are you doing out there?" Her voice cracked with urgency, half command, half fear. The man turned slowly, surprised by her voice. He was in overalls, a cleaning rag slung over his shoulder, gloves tucked into his belt. He blinked at her, then gave a small, confused smile. "She's waiting for me," he said simply. Rachel stepped out cautiously. "Who's waiting for you?" He tilted his chin down toward the street. Rachel followed his gaze. Below, in the dim halo of a street lamp, stood a little girl, bundled in a pink jacket, clutching a worn stuffed animal, waving upwards. Beside her sat an elderly woman on a crate, selling roasted chestnuts from a cart. The girl waved again, beaming. Rachel froze. He turned back to the glass and used the fog of his breath to draw a lopsided cat on the window. He waved his hand, and the girl below jumped and clapped. She had seen it. Joseph chuckled softly. "We do this every night. She waits, and I draw. It's our game." Rachel leaned against the frame, watching silently. The girl was so full of joy, her face lifted with delight. That simple moment pierced something in her, sharp and sudden. "If my child had lived," she whispered, more to herself than to him, "she would have been around that age." Joseph looked over gently, but said nothing. There was a long silence between them, filled only by the quiet of the city and the foggy breath that softened the cold. Finally, Rachel asked, "What's her name?" "Lily," Joseph said, smiling at the thought. "She's 5. I can't afford daycare, and my sister's in another state. The office won't allow kids inside, so I ask Mrs. Juan, the vendor down there, to watch her. She's kind, keeps Lily safe while I clean the floors." "You work the night shift?" Rachel's voice softened. "I take whatever shift lets me pick her up from school and be there when she sleeps." He gave a small shrug. "Cleaning pays enough to keep us fed. I used to paint, but dreams don't always pay the bills." Rachel looked at him carefully now. His hands rough, eyes tired but kind, shoulders heavy with more than the cold. "You draw for her with steam," she said. "She thinks it's magic," he replied, almost shy. "Maybe it is." A pause. The wind blew between them, lifting the edge of his sleeve. "I'm Rachel," she said. "I know," Joseph replied. "You're the CEO." She raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" Joseph replied. "You're the CEO." She raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" "Just a cleaner," he said, not bitterly. Just as a matter of fact. There was another silence. But for the first time in weeks, Rachel didn't feel alone in it, and Joseph didn't feel invisible. Inside the glass, where his breath was fading, the drawing remained, soft and imperfect, a symbol, a moment. Rachel looked down at Lily again, who still waited, watching the sky as if it might bring stories. "She's lucky to have you," Rachel murmured. Joseph didn't answer, but his eyes, full of quiet purpose, said enough. Rachel turned back to the office, her steps slower. Behind her, the man remained, finishing one more sketch for a little girl who thought her father painted the stars. Under the soft hum of the lobby's morning bustle, Rachel stepped out of the elevator with her coffee in hand and her mind already swimming with deadlines. Her assistant trailed behind her, rattling off calendar updates, but she paused mid-step. Near the reception desk, the janitor from last night, Joseph, was standing with a clipboard, talking briefly with a security guard. He wore the same navy uniform, his posture relaxed, one hand adjusting the strap of a small backpack slung over his shoulder. Rachel's eyes caught his for a moment. Joseph noticed and gave her a polite nod, not expecting more, but to his surprise, Rachel offered a slight smile, brief, restrained, but real. It was the first time someone from upper management had acknowledged him beyond a "watch your mop." That evening, Rachel stayed late again, a habit now. The office grew quieter as the floors cleared out, and as the silence settled over the building, she heard the familiar soft sound of wheels rolling across tile, then a distant tapping, Joseph wiping down the glass panels at the far end of the hall. Rachel opened her door, leaned slightly against the frame, and said, "You always draw, or was that just last night?" Joseph looked up, a little startled. He gave a half smile. It started with smiley faces. Now she wants stars, lots of them. Rachel walked closer, a paper folder still in her hand. "Does she know you used to be an artist?" Joseph's hand paused mid-swipe. "No, not really. She thinks I used to paint stars. Did you?" "I tried." She leaned against the wall beside him. "You don't talk like a janitor." He gave a soft laugh. "I wasn't always one." A beat passed. "Tell me," she said. Joseph glanced at her, a little hesitant, then exhaled. "Before Lily, I was a freelance illustrator, children's books mostly. I painted stories about space rabbits and rain cloud dragons. My wife, Anna, she was my biggest fan. We used to spend weekends sketching together at parks. We dreamed about starting our own studio." Rachel listened quietly. "But then," he continued, voice lower, "Anna died. Car accident. I was at home making pancakes with Lily. One phone call, and everything changed. I tried to keep up with commissions, but raising a toddler alone? Deadlines became impossible. The money dried up, and dreams don't buy food." Rachel's throat tightened. Joseph turned to the side and pulled something from the large pouch of his work bag, a sketchbook, worn at the edges. He handed it to her, almost shyly. Rachel opened it. Inside were pages of color, crayon skies and dancing trees, monsters with kind eyes, children laughing under starlight. Some were unfinished, some scribbled on in a child's scrawl, but every page had warmth, joy, love. "Me's are," Rachel paused, turning a page slowly, "magical. They used to be my world," he said quietly. "Now they're just memories." Rachel looked up. "Why did you stop?" Joseph gave her a long look. His voice, when it came, was calm but certain. "Because dreams don't buy food. But maybe they buy smiles." She closed the sketchbook gently. "Your daughter is lucky," she said. "I think I'm the lucky one." They stood in silence again, but this time it was comfortable. "I should get back to work," Joseph murmured, placing the book back into his bag. Rachel stepped away, then turned. "You know, most people think I'm difficult, that I don't smile." "Are you?" he asked gently. She considered that for a moment. "I used to smile more, before I stopped believing in soft things." Joseph didn't push. He just nodded. Rachel started to walk away, then hesitated. "Joseph?" He looked back. "Do you still have the painting of the girl on the moon holding a star?" His eyes widened a little. "Yes, that was Anna's favorite." Rachel gave him a small smile. "It's mine too. Show it to me sometime." And with that she walked away, heels echoing down the hall, but her steps a little lighter than they'd been in months. Under the pale light of her office, Rachel sat hunched over a screen of endless spreadsheets, numbers dancing in front of her tired eyes. The financial report was a disaster, not in its contents, but in the sheer lifelessness it brought to her soul. She sipped cold coffee and rubbed at her temple. Another hour had passed, and she still felt like she was running in place. She stood up, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, and stared into the night. Down below, the city moved on, oblivious, relentless. And then, just outside the glass, the faint sound of movement caught her attention. Joseph was there again. He moved with quiet precision, his squeegee cutting wide, practiced arcs across the window. Then he paused and leaned closer, With a breath against the cold glass, he drew something in the condensation. A small house. A smiley face. A heart. She watched, unmoving. As he stepped back, he caught her gaze through the window. Startled, he gave a small nod. Rachel turned, walked to the door and opened it slowly. "Joseph," she called out. He hesitated, hand still on his cleaning cloth. "Yes, ma'am? Come in for a moment, just a break." He seemed unsure but stepped inside. She gestured toward the armchair near the side table. "Sit. I'm not sure if I'm allowed," he said, still standing. "You're allowed," she replied softly. He sat down, careful not to wet the upholstery, his cleaning gloves tucked in his lap. She poured 2 cups of tea, her own late-night ritual, and offered him one. He blinked. "Thank you." Silence lingered for a few sips. Rachel broke it. "Why do you draw them? The symbols, I mean." Joseph smiled faintly. "Lily likes to guess what they are. It's our little game. It keeps her calm, knowing I'm right up here watching." Rachel nodded slowly, then glanced at him. "Joseph, what do you think of me?" He looked up, surprised. "I mean it," she continued. "You work here. You've heard the rumors, the names." He hesitated. "They say you're cold, distant, heartless." Rachel took a long breath, then let it out. "They're not entirely wrong. I wasn't always like this. Her voice faltered. She set her cup down and looked at the city lights beyond the window. "I lost a child, a baby boy, 5 years ago." Joseph said nothing. His expression softened. Rachel continued, quieter now. "It was sudden, complications. I was 2 months from holding him in my arms, and then nothing." Joseph's hand tightened slightly around his cup. "My fiancée couldn't handle it," she said. "Said I wasn't the same, that I was too much grief." He left 3 weeks later. Joseph's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. "They told me I might not be able to conceive again. I didn't even try. I just buried the idea. Buried myself in work, company growth, meetings, deadlines. I became the woman they say I am now." Silence stretched again. Rachel blinked rapidly, then chuckled bitterly. "And I still buy tea for 2, every night." Joseph reached out, his hand covering hers gently. It was warm, solid. No grand words, just presence. "They don't see it," he said quietly. "But I do." Rachel looked at him, startled. "I see strength. I see softness. You hide behind reports and appointments. I see someone who still looks out the window hoping to feel something." Her eyes welled. She turned her hand and gently squeezed his in return. "You're not what they say either, you know." He gave a soft smile. "I used to paint stars." They both laughed lightly, tears softening the sharp edges of their pasts. That night nothing was fixed, but something shifted. 2 people, broken in their own ways, found in each other something that resembled comfort. Not love yet, but a place to begin healing. The next evening, Rachel stepped out of her office just as Joseph was finishing wiping down the long glass panels in the hallway. She carried a small paper bag in one hand and approached him without her usual heels, just soft flats that made her movements quieter, less commanding. "Joseph," she said softly. He turned, startled at first. "Ma'am?" "Rachel," he corrected quickly. She handed him the bag. He blinked. "What's this?" "Nothing big," she said casually. "Just something for Lily." He opened it and froze. Inside was a tiny pair of pink canvas shoes, just Lily's size, with little white daisies stitched on the sides. Joseph swallowed hard. "You bought her shoes?" "I noticed hers were starting to wear thin," Rachel said, trying to keep it light. "And she's always jumping, running. Thought she might need something sturdier." Joseph stood there, the shoes cradled in his hands like something too delicate to be real. "You didn't have to. I wanted to." He looked up at her, searching for something in her expression. "She'll love them," he said finally, voice thick. "Thank you." The next night, Joseph showed up at her office with a brown paper bag that smelled of spices and something warm. "What's this?" Rachel asked, lifting an eyebrow. You said last week you missed homemade food. Thought I'd bring you something from the vendor around the corner. He makes this banh mi, kind of tastes like my mom used to make." Rachel opened the bag and took a bite. Her eyes widened. "Okay, that's unfairly good." Joseph grinned. "Told you." They ate side by side in her office, the window open slightly to let the night breeze in. For the first time in a long time, Rachel didn't feel like she was running on borrowed time. She felt present, grounded. A few days later, Rachel asked, "Would you two like to go for a walk? Just nothing formal. I'd like to meet her properly." Joseph hesitated, then nodded. She'd like that. So, that Friday night, after his shift ended early, they met outside the building. Lily ran up first, pink shoes lighting up with tiny LED flashes as she moved. Rachel knelt down, smiling. "You must be Lily." "I'm 5 3/4, Lily declared proudly. Rachel laughed. "That's the best age." They strolled down the block, stopping at a vendor cart for grilled skewers and sweet corn. Lily tugged Rachel's hand excitedly when she saw cotton candy, and Joseph gave a mock sigh and handed over a few bills. Rachel took a bite of her skewer and laughed as Lily told a dramatic story about a ninja cat she dreamed about. "She's quite the storyteller." Joseph nodded. "She gets that from her mom." They ended up sitting on a bench outside a closed bookstore, the warm evening wrapping around them like a soft blanket. Lily leaned against her father's side, eyes starting to droop. Joseph covered her with his jacket. Rachel turned to him. "She's lucky to have you." He looked at her. "Some days, I don't feel like enough." "Some days," she said gently, "you just being there is everything." Joseph's gaze softened. "You laugh more now." Rachel looked away, smiling to herself. "I didn't realize how long it had been since I did." They sat there, silent, watching cars roll by. And in that quiet, a strange warmth settled between them, a feeling Rachel hadn't known she missed, one that Joseph hadn't dared to hope for. It felt a little like family, a little like home, and for the first time in years, neither of them wanted the night to end. Joseph's hands trembled slightly as he wiped down the last panel of glass on the 22nd floor. His movements were slower tonight, less precise. The mop handle slipped from his grip once, and he cursed under his breath. It was not the work. He had done harder things. It was the weight of worry pressing into his spine like a second gravity. Rachel noticed it immediately. She had been reviewing projections at her desk, but something in his eyes, those tired, hollow eyes, made her pause. She leaned against the doorframe of her office, watching him a moment longer. Finally, she stepped out. "Joseph," she called, voice calm but direct. He turned, startled. "Mrs. Hale?" he greeted quietly, trying to muster a smile. "You look like hell," she said, not unkindly. Joseph chuckled softly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Long day." "That's more than just a long day," she replied. "What's going on?" He hesitated. His instinct was to lie, to say everything was fine. But something in her gaze, a rare softness, an unspoken concern, made him falter. "It's Lily," he said finally. "She's got a fever, high, wouldn't eat. But I couldn't miss this shift. I left her with Mrs. Ken downstairs. She promised to call if it gets worse." Rachel's expression changed instantly, alarmed, disbelieving. Her voice rose. "You left a sick child with a street vendor?" Joseph flinched. "I didn't have a choice," he said, his voice tight. "I can't lose this job." Rachel stared at him. Then, without another word, she grabbed her keys and bag. "Let's go," she snapped. "Wait, what?" "To get your daughter, now." The ride down the elevator was tense. Joseph sat stiffly beside her in the car, guilt etched across his face. Rachel drove fast but steady, her hands gripping the wheel tightly. She did not speak, her jaw clenched. They found Lily lying weakly on a makeshift bed behind the vendor's cart. Her cheeks were flushed deep red, her breathing shallow. Mrs. Khan looked up with apology. "I was just about to call," she said gently. "She's getting worse." Rachel didn't wait. She scooped the child into her arms without hesitation. "She's burning up," she whispered, then turned to Joseph. "Get in." The hospital was 20 minutes away. Rachel barely registered the traffic lights. She kept glancing in the rearview mirror, where Lily lay in the back seat, wrapped in Joseph's jacket. Joseph held her hand, whispering soft reassurances, eyes glassy with fear. In the emergency room, Rachel took control. She answered questions, filled out forms. Joseph paced like a caged man, his fists clenched. Rachel didn't leave his side. Hours passed. They sat outside the pediatric ICU, two strangers bound together by silence, by fear, by something deeper neither had the words to name. Joseph stared at the sterile floor, while Rachel's eyes stayed fixed on the door. "I should have stayed home," he said at one point, voice hollow. Rachel turned to him. "And how would you pay rent? Buy her medicine? You did what you had to do." "But I left her." "You did not leave her. You fought for her the only way you knew how." Then the doctor emerged. "She's stable. The fever's down. You got her here just in time." Joseph exhaled like he had been holding his breath for hours. Rachel covered her mouth, eyes filling, and then, without thinking, she stood and wrapped her arms around him. He froze at first, caught off guard, but then returned the embrace. She smelled like lavender and office paper. He smelled like rain and sweat and something heartbreakingly human. "She'll be okay," Rachel whispered. "She'll be okay." But in her heart, what she felt most wasn't relief. It was something deeper. It was connection, and the ache of knowing she had almost lost something that wasn't hers, but mattered all the same. The hospital room was dimly lit, washed in soft amber hues from a single bedside lamp. The rhythmic beeping of the monitor kept time with Rachel's heartbeat as she sat silently beside Lily's bed. Joseph stood near the window, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the shadows of cars moving below. Neither had spoken for a long time. The silence felt too heavy for words. Then Lily stirred. Her little fingers twitched against the blanket. Her eyelashes fluttered. Rachel leaned forward, holding her breath. Joseph turned sharply at the sound, his posture shifting with a jolt of hope and fear. Lily blinked slowly, her gaze unfocused, her lips parted as if tasting the air for the first time in hours. Then she looked at Rachel, her face blurry from tears and exhaustion, and whispered, "Mama?" Rachel froze. Joseph took a step forward, heart skipping. "Lily, sweetheart, that's not..." But Rachel raised a trembling hand, gently stopping him. Her other hand reached out and clasped Lily's tiny fingers, so small and warm and real. "Let her call me that," she whispered, "just for now." Joseph looked at her, really looked, and for the first time he saw something in her eyes he had never seen before. Not the steely resolve of a CEO or the guarded composure of a woman used to hiding her pain. He saw the fracture, the raw, aching need, a wound too old to bleed, but too deep to ever fully heal. Rachel's lips trembled, her voice barely audible. "No child has ever called me that before." Joseph swallowed hard, his chest tightened. He had seen her powerful, he had seen her kind, but he had never seen her unguarded, crumbling in quiet pieces. It undid him more than any outburst ever could. Lily had already drifted back to sleep, lost again in the warm haze of medicine and dreams. Rachel stayed seated, unmoving, her hand still clutching Lily's like it was her only tether to the world. Her breathing was shallow, her shoulders tense, as though afraid that letting go would mean losing something she had never truly had. "She would have been 5, Rachel said suddenly, her voice cracking. "My daughter, if she'd lived." Joseph sat down beside her without a word. "I was almost 5 months pregnant," she continued, her eyes never leaving Lily's peaceful face. "His name was Tyler, my fiancé. He left the day the doctors said I'd lost her, said he couldn't do it, couldn't watch me fall apart." Joseph didn't respond. He knew this was not a moment to fill with words. "I couldn't even cry," Rachel said. "Not for weeks. I went back to work. I kept pretending I was okay. I built this empire like it could fill the void, but it didn't. It never does." Her voice dropped to a whisper. I stopped believing I'd ever feel like this again." Joseph reached for her hand. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. "She called me Mama," Rachel repeated, her voice almost reverent. "It shouldn't have meant so much, but it did." Joseph looked at her with a tenderness that felt holy. "You were there when she needed someone. You didn't hesitate. You protected her. You comforted her. What else does a mother do?" Rachel finally turned to him. Her eyes were red but steady, alive with something deeper than pain. "I don't want to just visit. I don't want to be a passing moment in her life." Joseph held her gaze. "I want to help raise her," she said. "If you'll let me, I want to be part of her world, of your world." He was quiet for a long beat, his jaw working as he tried to swallow the emotion rising in his throat. Then he nodded, voice soft but certain. "She already loves you. And so do I." Rachel let out a shaky breath, half laugh, half sob. "I wasn't ready to fall in love again." "Neither was I," Joseph said. "But then you showed up, in the middle of the night, in the middle of the storm." They sat there for a while, hand in hand, watching Lily sleep. The machine still beeped, the lamplight still cast long shadows across the floor, but something inside the room had shifted. A quiet, unspoken vow was made in that silence. Not a promise of perfection, but a promise of presence. They left the hospital the next morning together. Rachel carried Lily to the car while Joseph gathered the bag. Lily leaned her head against Rachel's shoulder, murmuring softly, "Mama." Rachel kissed her forehead. Her voice was steady now, no longer trembling. "I'll be here," she whispered. "Every day, as long as you need." And from that moment, they were no longer two people circling a life that had once passed them by. They were a family, forged not by blood, but by choice and love. The shift in the office was subtle at first, lingering glances, half-concealed whispers. Then it spread like wildfire, the rumors. They crept into boardrooms and break rooms, sliding beneath glass doors and into carefully worded emails. Rachel Archer, the brilliant, ruthless CEO, and the janitor? The man who wiped down windows and emptied bins? "She's having a breakdown," someone muttered. "He's just using her," said another. "Midlife crisis," a smirk added. "Or maybe she just got lonely." Rachel heard them, not directly, not always, but in the silence that fell when she walked into a room. In the way some execs looked past her during meetings. In the board's sudden interest in her personal life. She began to question everything. Was she being reckless? Had she blurred lines she could never unblur? And what about the company? The legacy she built brick by brick, bone by bone. Was it now at risk because of a man with calloused hands and a daughter who called her Mama? That night she was distant. Joseph noticed the change the moment she greeted him with a forced smile and eyes that did not linger. "Rach," he said gently as they stood outside near the loading dock where they used to sneak moments of peace. "What's going on?" "Nothing," she said quickly, too quickly. He stepped closer. "You've barely looked at me all evening. I've been busy." "With avoiding me?" he said, sharper than he intended. Rachel's jaw tightened. "I can't afford to be seen as weak." "Is that what this is?" Joseph asked. "Weak?" "I don't know," she snapped, pacing. "All I know is that people are talking. Investors are watching. They think I've lost control. Because you love someone who's not in a suit?" he said bitterly. "Because I love someone who—" She stopped herself. "Who what?" Joseph asked, stepping forward. "Who doesn't belong in your world?" She didn't answer, and that silence was too much. Joseph let out a breath, fists clenched. "Why are you pulling away?" Rachel turned, eyes flashing. "Why do you care so much?" His voice rose, raw and unfiltered. "Because I'm already in love with you, and I'm terrified you'll forget this was real." Silence. Only the hum of the city below filled the space between them. Rachel stared at him, her lips parted. Then slowly, her shoulders slumped. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Not of you. Of what this means. Of losing everything I built." Joseph stepped closer. "Then build something new. With me. With Lily." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "I've never felt more like myself than when I'm with you," she said, "but I've also never felt more exposed." He reached for her hand. "You're not alone, and you're not wrong for wanting love." She held his gaze. "Even if it costs me everything?" He smiled sadly. "If it's real, it gives you more than it takes." She didn't reply. She just leaned into him, her forehead resting against his chest. And for the first time that night, the silence wasn't cold. It was comforting, because even in the doubt, even in the fear, there was love, and love was real. 1 year later, the building at the corner of 12th and Maple had transformed. Where once stood an empty storefront, now gleamed a wide glass window painted with watercolor stars and bright blue letters, "Lily's Light, Art Studio and Gallery." Inside, children laughed, brushes danced, and walls were filled with messy masterpieces. At the back of the studio, Joseph stood by an easel, his sleeves rolled up, his hands still stained with color. The man who once scrubbed windows was now teaching others how to see through them. He never told anyone who had helped make it possible. The donation paperwork listed an anonymous benefactor, but every time he looked up and saw Rachel standing by the door with Lily on her hip, he knew. She had done this, quietly, without credit, because that was the kind of woman she was. Rachel had changed too, not in the sharp cut of her suits or the way she led meetings with unwavering clarity, but in the softness behind her eyes, in the way she smiled now without holding back. Her office at the top of the tower still bore her name in silver, but most days she finished work early to join Joseph and Lily at the studio, her heels swapped for sneakers, her planner left behind. The adoption had been finalized 6 months ago. It was a quiet courtroom, just a few friends. Rachel sat beside Joseph, her hands trembling slightly as the judge read the order aloud. Lily, sitting on her lap, was more fascinated by the judge's gavel than the gravity of the moment. But when the judge looked up and said, "Ms. Archer, do you accept full legal guardianship of Lily Rose Bennett?" Rachel's voice did not waver. "I do," she said. Tears spilled before the gavel ever fell. Now, on Lily's 6th birthday, the studio was decorated with paper lanterns and glittery stars. Balloons hung from every corner. There was cake and music and more laughter than the walls could hold. Rachel watched as Lily tore open her presents, with Joseph crouched beside her, guiding her small hands. The light in their eyes reflected something Rachel had once thought she had lost forever. When the guests began to leave, when the music quieted and the stars outside began to shine, Joseph took Rachel's hand and led her toward the corner of the room where the first painting he ever showed her now hung. A house, a sky full of stars, a tiny figure holding a child's hand, looking up. "I've been waiting to do this the right way," he said, reaching into his pocket. Rachel blinked as he pulled out a small velvet box. "Joseph." He opened it, not to reveal a ring, but a silver chain. On it hung a tiny pendant, a circle engraved with the initials R and L, and a tiny delicate charm beside it. A charm Rachel instantly recognized. It was the one she had left on her desk a year ago, the charm from a bracelet she had bought when she was pregnant, the last piece of the child she had lost. "I found this the night we met," Joseph said, his voice quiet. "You left it on the table. I didn't know what it meant until later." Rachel reached up, brushing a tear from her cheek. "This is all I had left of her," she whispered. "I know," he said, "but I thought maybe it could mean something more now." He took her hand, placed the chain in her palm, and closed her fingers around it. "Rachel Archer," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "You saved my life. You gave my daughter a future. You gave me back a dream I had buried for years. She made us family. But you made us whole." Rachel's breath caught. Then she nodded, once, slowly, and threw her arms around him. From the corner, Lily's voice called out, "Mama! Daddy! Look!" She was pointing to the cake table where a candle had relit itself. Rachel laughed through her tears. Joseph pulled her in closer. They walked back to Lily hand in hand. They were not a perfect picture. They were something better. They were a family, built from loss, from kindness, from second chances. And above them, in the window Joseph once cleaned in silence, now hung a hand-painted sign in Lily's handwriting. Home is where the heart heals. And theirs had, together. If this story stirred something in your heart, if it reminded you that even in the quietest places, love can find its voice, then we invite you to stay with us a little longer. Life doesn't always follow the perfect script, but sometimes the most unexpected moments write the most beautiful chapters. Don't forget to subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more heartwarming tales of resilience, love, and second chances. Because somewhere, someone like Joseph or Rachel might be living a story just waiting to be told. And it might just be the one you needed to hear. Thank you for watching, and remember, the heart always knows the way home.